Hey, Vinyl community, for this episode, I wanted to do a review of the 5 worst sounding Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab albums that I have come across. Now, as you probably well know, Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs have come out with some really great half-speed masters, really some excellent sounding vinyl out there that they have mastered and released to the public, but there have also been some clunkers, and these 5 are ones that you should definitely avoid at all costs. Now, the first one is going to be Vanilla Ice to the Extreme from 1990. Now, on this album, the bass is mixed very low for some reason. If you have the original pressing of this album, you know the bass is just punchy. The hi-hat pops out of the speakers. Vanilla Ice's voice is just crystal clear. But for some reason, everything just sounds muted and very flat. In some cases, the voice is mixed higher than the backing track, which just totally sounds out of whack and is not an enjoyable listening experience. Especially on Stop That Train, the voice is mixed way too high. All the instruments and the bass and the rhythm track is just, it sounds so one-dimensional and it's not very enjoyable. Play That Funky Music has a very thin sound. There's no dynamic range at all. Just a huge, underwhelming listening experience. The second one is Barry Manilow. This one's for you from 1976. This is a very muddy mix. The original pressing wasn't the greatest, but this one, I don't know what they did to it, but the strings sound muted almost throughout the whole album. The drums are very flat. In some cases, you can't even hear the drums. It almost sounds like, are they playing drums or are they just like tapping a table with their hands? I'm like, what is going on here? You know, we hear Barry Manilow, some of Barry Manilow's best recordings, the brass is punchy, the rhythm, makes you want to dance, and Barry's voice just pops out of the speakers, and it's so joyful, and it's so exhilarating, but on here, it's like, what did you do? Daybreak. And that's a fantastic track on that album, but it's just so lifeless on there. I don't know why they don't have the bass mixed higher. And in some cases, Barry's voice is mixed very low, like on Weekend in New England, you can almost, and his voice is the most beautiful part of that song, but they've got it so it's really overwhelmed by the instrumentation on that track. And I can't take it. The next album, Richard Marx, Repeat Offender, his 1989 album. This half-speed master is just off. It's a catastrophe. The mix is offensive, let's call it that. Satisfied sounds very flat. This was the first single off the album, and there's no life to it at all. The bass is weak. The brass is weak. The synthesizers are very weak. His voice is just, it almost sounds like it's in one channel. That's how poorly this record is mixed. Right Here Waiting, the synthesizer backing is so muted. It's like, what is that? It's almost annoying to an extent. The bass is mixed so low throughout the entire album. It's, again, I love Richard Marx. This is definitely one of the classic albums of the 1980s, and it deserves a much better mix than this. I don't know how they dropped the ball, but they did. It's offensive to the ears. Next album is Fat Boys Are Back, 1985. This is the second album from the Clown Princes of Hip Hop. I really like Crushin', what they did with that album. The half-speed master of Crushin' crushes it. And I don't know if it's because this was a 1985 album, so I don't know if it was harder to get separation between the bass lines and the drum machines and their vocals. I don't know what exactly was going on here. There's no dynamic range at all. The highs and lows, it's all over the board there. If you've got the original pressing on this, it is the vocals are crystal clear. There's just so much life and there's urgency to the vocals. But here, Fat Boys Are Back, the lead-off track on here, you put the needle to the record and it's like, really? And I thought, is one of my speakers unplugged, or, do I have a bad connection somewhere? because it should sound a lot better than it does. The cassette tape, this is how badly this album sounds on the MOFI version of the cassette tape. I did a comparison. I put the MOFI record of this on, and then I put the cassette on. The cassette sounds better than this half-speed mastered MOFI version of this record. It's a catastrophe. It's an embarrassment. They really need to yank it off the market because it's not acceptable. I paid $40 for this record, and it sounds worse than the cassette tape that I paid $3 for. So, you know, it's criminal. And then the last one is Berts Blockbusters from 1974. And again, the original pressing of this was, I think, as perfect a record as you're going to hear. So it was going to take a lot to top it. But you don't need to make it worse, okay? Doing the pigeon. The brass is very loud. Bert's voice, you can barely hear Bert's pigeon calls. You can't hear him over the brass. It's like whoever engineered this needs to be taken out and shot. I'm sorry, but you don't do that to a classic song like that. You don't bury Bert's vocal that deeply in the mix. Pat, patty, pat, the hand claps are muted. You know, the signature sound on this record is the hand claps, it's the bubbles, and it's Bert's voice. And for some reason, all those elements, they chose to mix low. You've got the bass mixed high, higher than it should be. You know, I'm not listening to Bert for the bass. This isn't a hip hop album. It's not a jazz record. Can we bring the bass down a little bit, please? On the bass story, the bubble sound effects, they're only in the left channel. If you've got the original pressing, you feel like you're surrounded by bubbles. But here, it's the bath song, and you've got bubbles in only one channel. And then Bert's voice is over here. You do not get the sensation. You don't get the experience of feeling like you're in the bathtub with Bert. It's like Bert's over here, the bubbles are over here. The splashing, for whatever reason, it's very low. At first I was like, is that splashing? What is going on there? I wasn't sure, is that a tambourine? But no, I turned the volume up on it. It's like, no, that's the splashing. So and for most of the record, it's flat sounding, which is inexcusable. Because, again, Bert's voice is very animated, but you don't get that on this record. Very disappointing. I paid $59.99 for this record, and I returned it. I'm like, this is unacceptable quality. And I almost didn't buy another MOFI record after that. I'm like, no, I am not. I'll just buy the 180 grams I'll buy the 180 grams from on now if this is what I'm going to get from MOFI, and it's just not acceptable, and you should not in any way settle for this crap. So anyway, avoid these 5 albums at all costs. There's some that are bad too, but these for me are the worst offenders. So thanks for watching, and consumer beware.